I walked into a tattoo shop to forget her. I walked out unable to stop thinking about someone new. Her hand shook the first time she touched my arm. "You're shaking," I whispered. She said, "So are you." 3 months later. My mother saw a photo of us. She blocked my number before I could explain anything. Then Jordan got a job offer 3,000 miles away. I had exactly 1 week to decide what I wanted. My name is Sarah Whitfield, 28 years old, living in Austin, Texas. Working a marketing job I tolerated more than loved. Quietly rebuilding myself after a painful breakup. I'd spent years hiding parts of who I was from my family. And that January, I finally decided a tattoo would be my quiet declaration of independence. The shop was called Ironwood Inc., tucked between a coffee roaster and a record store, its windows fogged with the promise of something permanent and true. I'd chosen it because a coworker swore by the artist there. A woman named Jordan who apparently had hands like magic and a stare that could stop traffic. I laughed off the comment in the break room, certain it meant nothing, not realizing how quickly I'd understand exactly what she meant. Jordan Reyes had short dark hair, ink climbing both forearms, and the calm, unhurried energy of someone who had nothing left to prove to anyone. She looked at my sketch of a small compass rose and said, "This is about starting over, isn't it?" Like she could read my whole story in one glance. I nodded. Surprise. And she smiled like she'd guessed correctly on purpose, then gestured for me to sit down in the worn leather chair. Her hands were steady until they touched my skin, and then, just for a second, I felt them tremble against my wrist. "You're shaking," I said, half teasing. And she looked up with an expression somewhere between embarrassment and something warmer she wasn't ready to name. "So are you," she said quietly. And I realized she was right, my pulse thudding louder than the buzz of the tattoo machine. When she finished, she wrapped the tattoo with a gentleness that felt like more than professional care, like she was protecting something fragile in both of us. "Come back in 2 weeks so I can check the healing," she said. And I knew, even then, I would have come back with or without an excuse. As I paid at the counter, she mentioned, almost offhand, that she'd once done a memorial tattoo for a woman named Casey, my best friend from college, who'd passed away 3 years earlier. I froze, stunned by the coincidence, and told her Casey had been the one who taught me it was okay to love who I loved. Jordan's eyes softened. "She talked about a friend named Sarah once," she said. "I think some threads find their way back to each other." I told myself the second visit was only about the tattoo, but I'd already picked out my outfit 3 times before deciding on the 4th. Jordan checked my healing ink with careful fingers, and this time neither of us pretended the air between us wasn't different. Charged. Waiting. "You could just get coffee with me," she said, not looking up from my wrist. Instead of inventing tattoo excuses every few weeks, I laughed harder than the joke deserved, mostly out of relief that she'd said what I hadn't dared to. We ended up at a diner 2 blocks over, sharing a plate of fries neither of us finished because we were too busy talking. She told me she'd grown up in San Antonio, the daughter of a mechanic, the only one in her family who'd left for something as impractical as art. I told her about my father's small hardware store in Ohio, how I'd moved to Texas partly for the job, and partly to become someone new. Neither of us said the word date, but we both left the diner smiling like it had been exactly that. Over the following weeks, our texts stretched from tattoo aftercare tips into late-night conversations about everything and nothing at all. She sent me photos of half-finished sketches. I sent her playlists I made specifically imagining her reaction to each song. One night she asked if she could walk me home after we grabbed dinner, and I said yes before she even finished the question. Outside my apartment, under a streetlight flickering like it wanted privacy too, she asked if she could kiss me. I said yes again. And this time the yes felt like it belonged to a version of me I'd been waiting years to become. Her kiss was soft, deliberate, nothing like the rushed uncertainty I'd known before. Like she had all the time in the world just for me. I floated home that night, replaying the moment until it blurred into something I was afraid to trust completely. My last relationship had ended with a woman who wanted me only in private, never in daylight, never in front of anyone who mattered. I hadn't told Jordan that yet. Hadn't told her how carefully I still guarded the parts of myself I'd learned to hide. But something about her patience made me believe, maybe foolishly, that this time could be different. We started spending weekends together, hiking the Greenbelt trails, cooking terrible pasta in her tiny kitchen, laughing at how bad we both were at it. She introduced me to her chosen family first, a loud, warm circle of friends who welcomed me instantly. No explanations required. "They're the family I built," she said. After the one I was born into decided love had rules I couldn't follow. I wanted to ask more. But I could see the old ache behind her eyes and decided some stories deserved to be told slowly. One evening she traced the compass tattoo on my wrist and said, "I hope wherever this points you, it points you toward staying." I told her I wasn't planning on going anywhere. And for the first time in years, I actually meant it. My coworkers started noticing the change in me. The way I smiled at my phone. The way Fridays suddenly mattered again. I hadn't told my family yet. I told myself there was time. That the moment would present itself naturally when I was ready. Jordan never pushed. Never asked when she'd meet my parents. Though I could tell the silence sometimes weighed on her more than she admitted. "I'm not in a hurry," she said one night. "But I don't want to be somebody's secret forever. Sarah." Her words landed harder than she probably intended. A quiet warning wrapped in patience I didn't yet know how to earn. I promised her I wasn't hiding her. Only waiting for the right moment. Though even I wasn't sure such a moment existed. We spent our 2-month anniversary at a small art show where one of her pieces hung on the wall. A portrait titled simply Becoming. Standing beside her, watching strangers admire something she'd made from her own healing. I felt proud in a way that scared me a little. That night she told me, for the first time, that she loved me. Her voice steady even though her hands, as always, gave her away. I said it back without hesitation, surprised by how easily the words arrived once I finally let myself believe them. For a while, everything felt uncomplicated. The kind of good that makes you forget good things can still come apart. I should have known better than to let myself get comfortable before facing the parts of my life I'd been avoiding. My cousin Emily called one afternoon, casually mentioning she'd seen my tattoo photos online and asking, half joking, who the woman in the background was. I laughed it off, said, "Just a friend," and immediately hated myself for the ease with which the lie came out. Jordan was in the kitchen when I said it, and though she said nothing, I saw her shoulders tighten just slightly. Later that night she asked, gently, how long I planned on being just a friend to the people who mattered most to me. I didn't have a good answer. Only excuses about timing and fear that sounded thinner every time I repeated them. "I'm not asking you to be brave for me," she said. "I'm asking you to be brave for you." Her words followed me for days, echoing every time I scrolled past a family photo without posting one of my own. I decided, finally, to invite my parents to visit Austin, telling myself I would find the right moment to introduce Jordan honestly. Jordan offered to help me prepare the apartment, casually mentioning she'd clear her schedule in case I wanted her there too. I hesitated, and that hesitation, brief as it was, told her everything my words hadn't yet. Emily, unaware of the tension, texted separately that she remembered Jordan's name from somewhere and would try to place it. My parents arrived on a Thursday. My mother armed with opinions about my apartment and my father quietly proud just to see me settled. I hadn't planned for Jordan to stop by, but she showed up with flowers, wanting, she said, to finally meet the people I talked about so much. My mother's smile faltered for half a second before politeness smoothed it back into place, though I recognized that flicker instantly. "This is Jordan," I said carefully, "a close friend," and felt Jordan's expression shift almost imperceptibly at the familiar. Painful word. Dinner was tense in ways only I seemed to notice. My mother's questions circling too close to truths I wasn't ready to hand her. After Jordan left, my mother said, "She seems very attached to you for a friend." Her tone light but her eyes sharp with suspicion. I deflected, exhausted, and excused myself to bed before the conversation could go anywhere I couldn't control. The next morning, Emily texted my mother a link, an old photo from Jordan's college years, captioned with an ex-girlfriend's name. My mother came into the kitchen holding her phone, her face unreadable, and asked simply, "Is there something you want to tell me?" My hands went cold. I told her the truth, that Jordan wasn't just a friend, that I loved her, that I had for months. My mother set her coffee down without a word, walked to the guest room, and closed the door quietly, which somehow felt worse than shouting. My father sat with me at the table, silent for a long moment, before saying only, "Give your mother time," and nothing more. That night, alone in my room, I called Jordan and told her everything, my voice breaking on words I'd rehearsed too many times before. She listened without judgment, though I could hear the old hurt in her own voice, the memory of a similar door once closed on her. "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have told her the truth from the start, instead of letting her find out like this." "I know," Jordan said gently, "but you told her now. That still counts for something." My parents left 2 days early, my mother barely speaking, my father hugging me tightly at the door and whispering, "I love you, whatever happens." The silence from my mother stretched into a week, then 2. My texts left unanswered, my calls sent straight to voicemail. Jordan tried to stay steady for both of us, but I could tell the rejection reopened wounds she'd spent years trying to heal. "This is exactly what happened with my own mother," she admitted one night. I watched her stop answering my calls too. She never started again. Her words terrified me more than anything my own mother had said. Because I couldn't promise her a different ending, I threw myself into work, avoiding the ache by staying busy. Though Jordan noticed the distance creeping between us even as I denied it. "You're pulling away," she said one evening. "And I don't think you even realize you're doing it." I insisted I wasn't, though some part of me knew she was right. That fear was quietly rebuilding walls I thought I'd already torn down. Emily called to apologize, insisting she hadn't meant to cause trouble, only to reminisce about someone she vaguely remembered from a mutual friend's wedding. I told her it wasn't her fault, though privately I wondered if some truths were always going to surface eventually, one way or another. A month into my mother's silence, Jordan mentioned, almost too casually, that a gallery in New York had reached out about featuring her work. My stomach dropped, though she assured me it was only a conversation. Nothing decided. Nothing I needed to worry about yet. Though, the timing felt cruel, arriving just as everything else in my life seemed to be quietly falling apart around me. I asked if she'd consider it, and she looked at me for a long moment before saying, "That depends on a lot of things, Sarah." Her answer, honest as it was, left me uneasy, aware that I was one of the things she meant, and unsure I deserved to be. We had our first real fight that week. Not loud, but cold. Both of us retreating into ourselves instead of reaching for each other. "I can't keep being the reason you're brave," she said. "If you won't be brave when it actually costs you something." I didn't have a response, because deep down I knew she was pointing at the exact fear I'd been avoiding my whole life. She left that night without another word, and I sat alone in my apartment wondering if I'd already lost the best thing I had. At work, I threw myself into a campaign deadline, grateful for anything that kept my mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. My father called, quietly, without my mother knowing, just to check on me. His voice careful in the way it always was when he wanted to say more. "Your mother needs time," he said again. "But I need you to know I've always known. Sarah." Since you were 17. I nearly dropped the phone, stunned that he'd carried that knowledge silently for over a decade, waiting for me to be ready. Why didn't you say something? Asked, my voice cracking. And he answered simply, because it wasn't mine to say. It was yours. His acceptance, quiet as it was, cracked something open in me. A small, steady hope I hadn't let myself feel in weeks. I texted Jordan that night, asking if we could talk, though I had no idea yet what I planned to say. She agreed to meet at the shop after closing. The same chair. The same low hum of machines settling into silence around us. I'm scared, I admitted, before she could speak first. Of losing my mother. Of losing you. Of doing this wrong. You don't have to do it perfectly, she said. You just have to stop disappearing every time it gets hard. I promised her I would try. And for the first time in weeks, she reached for my hand instead of pulling away. We didn't fix everything that night, but we stopped the bleeding. And sometimes that's the most honest kind of progress there is. 3 weeks later, my mother finally called, her voice tight but present, asking if I would come home for my grandmother's birthday. I hesitated, unsure whether the invitation included Jordan, and my mother's silence on the other end answered the question before I asked it. I need to think about it, I said, and she replied only, that's fair, before hanging up gently. Without anger this time, Jordan encouraged me to go, insisting our relationship shouldn't stall my chance to rebuild something with my family, however slowly it needed to happen. I'll be here when you get back, she said, though I noticed the flicker of worry she tried to hide behind her smile. At my grandmother's party, my mother introduced me to relatives with careful, neutral language, avoiding any mention of Jordan or the life I'd built in Austin. My grandmother, sharp-eyed even at 83, pulled me aside and asked plainly, are you happy, Sarah? That's all I care about. I told her the truth, that I was happier than I'd ever been, and she squeezed my hand and said, then that's enough for me. Her small act of acceptance meant more than I could explain. A crack of light in a week otherwise heavy with tension. On my last night home, my mother finally asked about Jordan directly. Her voice guarded but no longer entirely closed off. I told her everything, how we met, how patient Jordan had been, how much steadier I felt since letting myself be honest. My mother listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said only, I need more time. But I'm listening now. That's something. I flew back to Austin lighter than I'd left, though the ground beneath Jordan and me still felt less certain than I wanted to admit. The gallery in New York followed up while I was gone, this time with a formal offer, a 3-month residency, a real opportunity. Jordan told me hesitantly, watching my face for a reaction she clearly dreaded, unsure how I'd take the timing of it all. You should take it, I said, surprising even myself, though my voice wavered on the last word. I don't want to lose you over 3 months and a plane ticket, she said, and I could hear real fear beneath her calm. We spent that week pretending we had it figured out, dancing around the decision instead of confronting what it might actually mean for us. Meanwhile, a woman named Nicole started appearing more often at the shop, an old client, and, I soon learned, an old flame of Jordan's. Nicole made comments that seemed casual but landed like small, precise cuts, reminding me she'd known Jordan long before I ever walked through that door. We were serious once, Nicole told me one afternoon, unprompted. Watching my reaction closely, she doesn't usually let people in this fast. I tried to shake off the unease, but Nicole's presence, combined with the looming New York decision, began eroding my confidence in quiet, corrosive ways. One night I asked Jordan directly about their history, and she answered honestly, admitting Nicole had hurt her badly years earlier by leaving without warning. She's just a friend now, Jordan said. Nothing more. But I noticed she didn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. A few days later, Nicole texted me a photo Jordan and her, years younger, at what looked unmistakably like an engagement party. The caption read, "Some people never really let go. Ask her about the ring she still has." I confronted Jordan that night, showing her the message, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and confusion I couldn't fully separate. Jordan's face went pale. "That ring was returned years ago," she said. "Nicole's trying to get in my head. I don't know why you believe her over me." "I don't know what to believe," I admitted. "When everything feels like it's falling apart at the same time." We argued longer than we ever had. Old fears resurfacing, my hesitation around family, her old wound around abandonment, both of us raw and unfair. "Maybe New York is exactly what I need," Jordan said finally. "Some distance to figure out if this is worth fighting for." Her words hit harder than anything Nicole had said, because for the first time, I heard real doubt in Jordan's voice about us. I left her apartment that night without resolution, driving home through empty streets, replaying every mistake I'd made since the day we met. The next morning, my mother called unexpectedly, asking if she could visit Austin alone, without my father. Just the two of us. I agreed, cautiously hopeful, though my heart was still too consumed with the unresolved wreckage of the night before to feel much relief. My mother arrived quiet and observant, walking through my apartment slowly, pausing at a framed photo of Jordan and me from the art show months earlier. "She makes you happy," my mother said. Not quite a question. Studying the photo like she was searching for something she'd missed before. "She did," I said honestly. "I'm not sure what's happening between us right now." I told her everything, the New York offer, Nicole, the fight, surprised at how easily the words came once I finally let myself be vulnerable with her. My mother listened, then said something I never expected. "I let fear keep me from things too. Sarah, don't make my mistake." Her honesty cracked something open between us. The first real conversation we'd had in months that wasn't guarded by politeness or distance. "I still need time to fully understand all of this," she admitted. "But I don't want to lose you over my own fear." I hugged her, both of us crying quietly in my small kitchen. Years of careful distance finally beginning to soften into something more honest. That night, after my mother left, I drove straight to Jordan's apartment, uncertain whether she'd even open the door for me. She did. I was tired, guarded, clearly unsure what to expect after the way we'd left things the night before. "I don't care about Nicole," I said. "I care that I let fear keep pulling me away from you when you needed me steady." "I was scared too," Jordan admitted. "Scared you'd choose easy over real, the same way people always have before." We stood there, both raw and honest for the first time in weeks, finally saying the fears we'd been circling for far too long. "I don't want you to give up New York," I said. "I want you to go. And I want us to figure out the rest together." Jordan studied me carefully, like she was deciding whether to trust the offer, before finally nodding, slow and certain. "Then come with me," she said suddenly. "Not forever. Just for the residency. See if this life fits us both." The idea terrified me, leaving my job, my routine, everything familiar, but for once, the fear felt like possibility instead of danger. I spent the next week weighing the decision, talking it through with my father, who told me plainly, "Some risks are worth taking, Sarah." My mother, still healing but trying, surprised me by saying, "Go. I don't want to be the reason you shrink yourself again." Her words undid something in me I'd carried for years, a permission I hadn't realized I'd been waiting for since childhood. I gave notice at my job, my coworkers stunned but supportive, several admitting they'd noticed how much lighter I'd seemed since meeting Jordan. Nicole, hearing the news, showed up at the shop one last time, this time with something closer to regret in her expression. "I shouldn't have sent that photo," she admitted. "I was jealous." And I took it out on you instead of dealing with my own stuff. I accepted her apology, more out of wanting peace than genuine forgiveness, and let the resentment finally, quietly, dissolve. 2 weeks before we were set to leave for New York, Jordan received a call that changed everything we'd planned. Her mother, who hadn't spoken to her in nearly 6 years, had suffered a serious health scare and was asking for her by name. Jordan sat frozen on the phone, torn between old wounds and the fragile possibility of reconciliation before it might be too late. I don't know if I can face her, she admitted that night. After everything she said when I came out, I held her hand and said only, "You don't have to forgive her. But you might regret not going more than you'd regret going." We flew to San Antonio together, Jordan's hands shaking the entire drive to the hospital. The first time I'd seen her truly afraid. Her mother looked smaller than Jordan had described, fragile in the hospital bed, eyes widening with a mixture of shock and relief when she saw her daughter. "You came," her mother whispered, voice breaking. "And Jordan?" After a long, tense pause, finally sat down beside the bed. "I'm sorry," her mother said quietly. "I was wrong. I let fear and other people's opinions cost me years with my own daughter." Jordan cried harder than I'd ever seen her cry. Years of hurt finally finding somewhere honest to land after so long unspoken. I stood back, giving them space, though Jordan reached for my hand and pulled me gently into the moment beside her. "This is Sarah," Jordan said. "She's the reason I finally understood what it means to be loved without conditions." Her mother looked at me for a long moment, then said simply, "Thank you for bringing my daughter back to me." The reconciliation wasn't perfect or complete, but it was real. A beginning neither of them had believed possible only weeks earlier. On the drive back to Austin, Jordan was quieter than usual, processing years of grief finally beginning to loosen their grip on her. "I almost let pride keep me from that hospital room," she admitted. "I don't want to make that mistake with anyone else I love." Her words felt aimed at both of us, a quiet promise about the life we were choosing to build together going forward. Back home, my own mother asked, hesitantly, if she could meet Jordan properly this time, without pretense, without careful, guarded language. I arranged dinner, nervous in a way I hadn't been in months, watching my mother closely as she shook Jordan's hand at the door. The conversation was awkward at first, careful, full of small silences, but slowly it softened into something almost comfortable by dessert. "You make my daughter braver," my mother told Jordan quietly, near the end of the night. "I can see that clearly now." Jordan thanked her, visibly moved, and I felt, for the first time, like every piece of my life was finally sitting in the same room together. A week before our move, my mother surprised me by asking to see my tattoo again. Tracing the compass rose gently with her fingers. "I always wondered what this meant," she said, and I told her the truth that it meant choosing my own direction. Finally, without apology. "I think I understand that better now," she said. "Watching you become someone braver than I ever let myself be." Jordan's residency in New York was extended into a permanent gallery position, an opportunity neither of us had expected but both embraced together. We found a small apartment in Brooklyn, filled with half-finished sketches, moving boxes, and the quiet, steady comfort of finally building something real. My father visited first, walking through our new home slowly, nodding with quiet approval before pulling me into a tight, proud hug. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said. "She always said happiness doesn't need permission, just courage." My mother visited a month later, staying in our guest room, cooking dinner with Jordan, laughing over a recipe neither of them could get right. A year after that first nervous appointment at Ironwood Inc., Jordan tattooed a small compass rose onto her own wrist, mirroring mine exactly. "So we always know," she said. "No matter where we go, we're pointed toward each other." Andy.